Right now on the National Weather Desk, overnight flooding. Evacuations are underway in South Carolina after water from Tropical Storm Debbie fills a neighborhood.
People sheltering in place as flooding has truly swamped the low country.
Other communities are now cleaning up after feeling the wrath of the storm.
Windows busting and you just hear stuff moving all over the place.
Find out why a man from South Carolina is documenting the flooding in his hometown.
And it was probably one of the worst that I've seen it.
We're back at California's Park Fire to check on the efforts to put it out.
Where activity really picks up into the afternoon and into the night.
And why this is a great weekend to look to the stars.
One of the best meteor showers of the year upon us, and it peaks this weekend.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Matt Ritter. Breaking overnight, emergency evacuations took place in South Carolina as several communities were hit with flash flooding. Here you can see all the water that flowed into this home's basement as rain from what's left of Tropical Storm Debbie overwhelmed the region. Many roads in the area are impassable. Some people had to be rescued from their homes. Conley Grayson is in Monk's Corner this morning with the breaking details.
As you can see behind me in the neighborhood, the roads have just become canals. The roads connecting to the ponds now becoming one, multiple people having to shelter in place. The two men on the golf cart I just spoke with said they had been driving around this morning. They actually saw alligators and catfish here on the South Carolina roads with water submerging most cars, most intersections. It's been a very dangerous situation this morning as many people have had to evacuate, many people having to shelter in place. We've been driving laps on the highway, and we've been able to see multiple cars parked on the side of the road due to crossing those flood waters. Again, 2 feet of water can swoop your car out of the road, and we've seen that happen multiple times this morning. At one point on Highway 17, there was 5 cars stopped, making the highway 1 lane. I walked up to a man, asked him why he was out there, if any of these cars belonged to him. He said he was actually looking for his son's car. None of the 5 were his son's. So multiple cars out stranded on the roads this morning. Again, many people sheltering in place as flooding has truly swamped the low country. Reporting in Cane Bay, I'm Conley Grayson.
Now, overnight, Debbie was downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone. That means it no longer has the characteristics of a tropical storm. What's left of the storm is bringing heavy rain to the mid-Atlantic. There were also several tornado warnings while you slept, including in the nation's capital. The storm will continue to move north through the day. Meteorologist Ryan Coulter is tracking it for us this morning.
Well, Debbie has caused big problems across parts of the southern U.S. this week, and now that storm has hit the gas pedal, and it is moving quickly into the northeastern U.S. We have heavy rainfall this morning from the Virginias, the Carolinas, and north into Pennsylvania and New York, and that rainfall will continue. We're going to get more movement on Debbie today than what we have had the entire rest of the week, certainly a much quicker moving system. That's good news. That will result in less significant rainfall totals. However, the risk of flooding still there across parts of the Northeast. By tomorrow, that system is off U.S. soil. I want to show you some of those impressive rainfall totals, and the cutoff in moisture will be sharp, but we could be looking at 2 to 3 inches of rain across parts of Pennsylvania to New York and Maine.
And our crews were out all night and morning watching for impacts from the storm. Jacob Hunsatum is in Lynchburg, Virginia this morning.
3.2 inches of rain has pummeled the heart of Virginia over the last 24 hours or so. That water, it's got to go somewhere, and it looks like it's all going in places like this. If we turn the camera this way, you can see the rainwater has completely flooded the creek, flooded the river here to the point where it's risen several feet. If I even just take a couple steps this way, you can see the water has risen substantially here over the last probably 24 hours or so. Even turning the camera towards the Hollins Mill Dam, of course, normally the water, it's just kind of cresting over top of the dam, but this morning it is so loud here with the thousands of gallons of water that is just pouring over top. And it's just a couple of feet away from where people would normally be walking here on this creek. And if I take the camera this way, something I found really interesting this morning was when we first arrived on scene, I placed these 2 rocks here over the last hour or so. When we first arrived on scene, this was the highest point that the water was getting to. Over the last hour, it reached this point, but it started to recede a little bit back further this way. So that seems to be the good news. But as some more rainfall continues to come down here, waters could rise again.
In the Washington, D.C. region, heavy rain has been falling for most of the morning. There have been multiple tornado warnings in the D.C. suburbs and D.C. itself. So far, no indication of anything touching down. These conditions are expected to continue throughout the day in Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New York State. Well, not long after Debbie made a second landfall yesterday morning, it spawned several tornadoes in North Carolina. At least one person has been killed. Andrew McClung reports on how community members are picking up the pieces.
The story starts the same for Genesis Cooper and the Mitchell family. Both awakened to tornado alerts, but the aftermath is two different stories.
I have seen it on TV, but just never been through it, in person.
Cooper's home was severely damaged by the storm.
You can tell something was going on because it started rattling, and all of a sudden it was just a bunch of pressure in the house and windows busting, and you could just hear stuff moving all over the place. So we just started praying and got through it.
The Mitchell's home untouched.
So then I look across the street over there and I saw, because at that time the alarm was going off over there, and I think her sheriff was already over there. And she said, a tornado must be hit.
Leaving just a couple limbs in their yard, but Springfield Middle School about 200 yards away, walls are gone and so are parts of the roof. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper traveled to Wilson County Thursday afternoon to get a first-hand look at the storm damage.
It's amazing how devastating a tornado can be, but how targeted it could be, because the 6th and 7th grade classes over there were devastated, but the 8th grade classes were basically untouched.
We'll be able to rebuild, and it's just stuff, As long as we're safe, that's all that matters.
And back to South Carolina, as opposed to tornadoes, the biggest impact was from heavy rain. Nearly 20 inches fell in some places. Jason Berger is just east of Charleston with that part of the story.
Even the animals are wearing life preservers.
It comes up and down, but never seen it quite this bad.
Why? Because Debbie's deluge drenched Colleton County. Ireland Creek in Walterboro.
On a normal basis, you can drive in the parking lot, but this ain't even swim weather. It's past swim weather. You need a boat.
You would need a boat. Ireland Creek rose to 10.71 feet on Wednesday afternoon. It's the worst Andy Anderson can recall.
This one here just lasted a lot longer, where as before it would come up and go down the next day or the day after that, but this has been going on since, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday.
20 minutes southeast, Edward Road, incomplete. Runoff from Debbie eating through the soil. Down the road, on the banks of Horseshoe Creek, more of the same. This is the backyard of a neighborhood home Monday afternoon. By the time Debbie was done, the backyard became a swimming pool. The good news in Colleton County, Fire and Rescue is reporting there have been no injuries related to Tropical Storm Debbie.
The water here in Horseshoe Creek might get a little higher, nearby homeowners tell us, but will eventually recede.
Early indications show Debbie helped put a dent in the southeastern drought. The U.S. Drought Monitor released its latest map yesterday. The data is only valid through Tuesday, but check out this week on the left versus last week on the right. You can see the extreme drought. The red area on the map is no longer in South Carolina, and some areas of the state now have no drought. Next week's update could show an even bigger impact in a positive way. Well, the streak is over. The average temperature this past July was not hotter than July of 2023. That ends 13 consecutive months when a new average heat record was set. But that doesn't mean the threat of climate change is gone. July's average was still more than a full degree warmer than the average of the past 30 years. It was also the second warmest July on record, and it happened as the El Niño weather pattern was starting to give way to La Niña. For all the latest, most up-to-date weather content, be sure to check us out on social media. We also post content from our team of 200 meteorologists across the country. Just search the National Weather Desk on your favorite social media platform, or you can scan the QR code on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen and be sure to subscribe. Coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll head west to find out the latest on the park fire that's burning in California. And we'll have tips on what you can do to stay safe in a flash flood.
I'm meteorologist Ryan Munn with a look at the Northeast. We are looking at some moderate to heavy rainfall throughout the Northeast through the daytime today, especially for areas like Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, as well as areas up towards New Hampshire and Maine. That is where we are going to see the heaviest of rainfall associated with the remnants of Tropical Storm Debbie. And as we head through the day Saturday, skies will start to clear, but we are going to see the highest totals as you head off towards areas in New York and in Vermont.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. The remnants of Tropical Storm Debbie have weakened, and now they're going to continue to make their track across the area throughout your Friday. But most of this activity, if not all of it, will be gone by late Friday afternoon. And then Saturday into Sunday is looking a lot quieter. Between now and then, we could be talking about still some flooding rainfall throughout your Friday. And then the threat for even a few spin-up tornadoes. But temperatures will start to recover into this weekend with lower humidity.
I'm meteorologist Vitas Reed. Here's a look at your southeast forecast highs for the day. We're looking at 90 in Charleston, a hot one in Macon, 97 degrees, 96 in Mobile, 91 in Tampa, West Palm at 94 degrees. We have a little bit of sunshine finally breaking out, holding on down in Atlanta. It looks like up towards D.C., we're seeing that center of circulation as Debbie continues to move north, which plagued the Carolinas with heavy rain. We still have a chance for a few coastal showers and thunderstorms, but for the afternoon into the evening, we'll continue to see those break up.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Jared Bramblett is a flood engineer in Charleston, South Carolina. When flooding impacts his town, he hits the streets on his bicycle and takes photos of the high water. So, of course, Jared was out documenting flooding from Debbie. Meteorologist Emily Gracie spoke to him earlier this week about what he saw and how it compares to past flood events.
I woke up probably around 6:15 or so yesterday morning, and I mean, it was pouring outside. And my backyard, when it rains real heavy, it has trouble keeping up, and it's a low spot, and it can pond. But it ponded about 6 inches deep, which is the most that I've seen. When a break in one of the bands happened, and I was able to go out when it wasn't raining too hard, went and looked at the usual spots, King and UG Street intersection, and it was probably one of the worst that I've seen it. And then Gordon Street, which is another street that experiences a lot of flooding every time it rained, it was pretty bad as well. But the rain stopped pretty quickly. It was a really intense period of rain from probably 4 to 7 or so yesterday morning, and it stopped. So after that, things started draining, some places slower than others.
Did you notice the difference with the tides? Because the usual spots I noticed were not as high as I thought they were going to be during the high tides.
Yeah, tide definitely did not reach any sort of, I mean, it may have been higher than astronomically predicted, but there wasn't really any sort of surge to speak of, which was good, because had we seen a 7.5 or 8.5 foot tide, that rainwater would have had nowhere to go.
I know Charleston has made some changes when it comes to infrastructure. Have you noticed changes in how quickly water does recede?
Absolutely. The city, without getting too technical or in the weeds here, the city did the Spring Fishburne Drainage Improvement Project. They're actually still working on it. It's a pretty impressive system. It's anywhere from 8 foot to 15 foot diameter tunnels that are 140 feet below the ground. There's no pump station yet. Eventually there'll be a pump station to lift it out and push it out to the river, so it's not so dependent on their tide levels. And so west side, I think if you get to Crosstown, 17 Clark Parkway, Highway 17, and then north, Ashley, Rutledge, President Street, those areas have lots of photos of those areas flooded. They probably still did flood some yesterday, but they drained really, really quickly. And so even by the time I was out there on my bike, they were completely dry.
If you want to hear more stories from Jared about past flood events he's covered, check out this week's episode of our podcast, Off the Radar. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. As Debbie's remnants continue to drop heavy rain on parts of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast from now through tomorrow morning, it's raising concerns about flash floods. Meteorologist Violet Schreiber tells us how to stay safe.
So, if or when flash flooding does occur, remember the phrase, turn around, don't drown. Never drive through flooded roads. Or even if you're out walking, some moving water can wipe you off the road. Say if you're taking the dog for a walk and you encounter a flooded road, it really only takes 6 inches of moving water to brush you off the road, say into a creek, or maybe even cause some injuries. If you're driving and encounter a flooded road in a small car, it only takes about 12 inches of moving water to sweep that car off the road. Or if you're in a bigger SUV or a truck, it takes about 24 inches of moving water to sweep that off the road. So we want to prevent any injuries or fatalities from flooding as we monitor the threat for flooding from Debbie. And obviously our meteorologists will let you know exactly how much rain we're expecting to get out of this system. But always remember, never drive through flooded roads.
Well, the struggle for fire teams to contain the park fire as it continues to move through Northern California, pushing through the Lassen Volcanic National Park. Max Tedford was out in the area to see how efforts are going.
He has been in the Mill Creek drainage area, been a tough piece of ground, a lot of steep and rugged terrain in there. Firefighters are working really hard to hold.
Bud England, acting PIO for CAL FIRE on the Park Fire, tells me work on the fire has been tough for fire teams, with the steep terrain continuing to give them trouble.
Spot fires are a lot more susceptible and get established a lot easier. And so right now, that's been the biggest issue out there.
As to wider operations, he says teams are continuing the tactics they've been using, digging out fire lines while air ops do drops where possible.
Continue to keep the boots on the grounds, keep the firefighters engaged, and always having the support of aircraft in there.
And he says so far efforts to defend Mineral and other nearby communities are going well.
A lot of good structure defense going in that area and into the cabins that are up in that area. And so just a good combined effort from the firefighters and all the agencies that are participating.
Now, when I talked to fire officials, they said they expect the park fire to maintain its pattern it's had over the past few days, where activity really picks up into the afternoon and into the night. And so they're expecting that again today. And we'll keep you updated with where the fire goes next.
Earlier this week, completely unrelated to Debbie, storms moved through northeast Ohio, leaving behind some incredible damage. But it wasn't just tornadoes that hit the region. One system that went through was called a macroburst. Meteorologist Marshall McPeak explains what it is and how it creates so much damage.
It's very similar to a microburst, it's just a whole lot bigger. So in a microburst, and in a macroburst as well, what's happening is in the storm, you're getting this influx in the mid-levels of dry air. So that dry air is actually causing some evaporation in the cloud. Just the same way your skin uses sweat and evaporation to cool, the same thing happens in the cloud. So we get evaporative cooling. Well, that cool air then is more dense than the air around it, and it begins to fall. So that air can fall very quickly out of the clouds, and when it gets to the ground, it spreads out in all directions. It's like dropping a water balloon, and you see the pattern on the sidewalk. The same thing happens with the air, but it can be going at upwards of 100 miles an hour or more. So that's why it can still do some really incredible damage, flattening trees, bringing down power lines, damaging houses. And in Cleveland, they were seeing wind gusts of close to 100 miles per hour in some places. It covered an area of 15 square miles. So that's why they're calling it a macroburst instead of a microburst, which usually is only a mile or two. It was a very big storm. They are still trying to get the power back on up there.
The Perseid meteor shower will peak this weekend. Meteorologist Chris Sushan has more on this cosmic display and how you can get the best views.
You may have already seen a couple of meteors. through the early part of the month, and it'll continue through most of August. But that peak is coming up this weekend. It's a byproduct of Comet 109P Swift Tuttle, which takes about 133 years to make an orbit around the sun. And every August, Earth passes through that little comet trail, and we get those little tiny little sand grains, dust particles from the comet to enter the atmosphere. So the peak will be Sunday night and Monday night, depending on how dark your sky is. Could see 40 to 90 meteors per hour. You want to favor the northeastern sky, grab a lawn chair or blanket to relax, enjoy the night, and give your eyes about a good 10 to 20 minutes to adjust to that night sky to see some of them. Some of them are very faint and fast. Others could be very bright fireballs and with a long streak across the sky. And again, the darker the sky, the better. If you're around city lights, you might be closer to 30, 40 per hour. Again, peaking this weekend. Have a wonderful weekend enjoying the Perseid meteor shower.
It's time now for a short break, but first we soar over Florida's Fort Pierce Inlet.
Well, a very good Friday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael. Look at how mild it's going to be across the Midwest for the day today. A lot of temperatures in the 70s. Still a little warm in the 80s across the Ohio Valley, but the cold front's moving through there today, and it will be cooler for the day tomorrow. As we take a look across the entire Midwest, most of us are dry on Saturday. Got a little rain in southern Kansas there, and a little bit more rain starting to move its way into the western plains on Sunday, but most of the Midwest dealing with a lot of sun.
Well, a good Friday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Chris Suchet. Look at our forecast today. And starting off, the chance for a couple of showers in North Texas Panhandle into Oklahoma, where temperatures are in the 60s and 70s to get the day started. Notice a little bit of a break from the heat with the highs in the 80s. Northern portions of the region could see a shower or two. Also, a couple of showers of thunderstorms, central South Texas. We step into Saturday's forecast, again, with a rain chance and cooler temperatures here. And it may get a shower or two in the central part of Texas Saturday afternoon.
Well, hi there, everybody, and a good Friday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. We're rounding out the work week with, big surprise, more heat out west, at least in the interior. Not so much around the coastline, just a foggy 66 near the Golden Gate Bridge, but 107 out of Las Vegas and back into the 90s for Portland and Spokane. Some monsoonal moisture back in play for Denver and for Salt Lake City, and air quality alerts in the Pacific Northwest. And that's the scene from here.
The National Weather Desk.
Race fans, NASCAR is heading to Richmond, Virginia this weekend. Meteorologist Brandon Lawson has a forecast and a warning for those thinking of heading to the area today.
Even traveling to Richmond is going to be really hard as what's left of Debbie rolls through the Virginia region. Again, I would be very careful. We're talking about heavy rainfall, a lot of flooding on primary and secondary roads. Visibility is going to be low at times, breezy conditions, even the threat for severe weather as you get further east towards Richmond. So please be careful if you're heading to the track today. I'd recommend staying home because it won't ruin your weekend. We've got great forecasts for this weekend. Saturday looks very nice for Richmond. 80s. The truck race should go off without a hitch. And then as you go into Sunday, the cup race looks perfect for weather. 80s, staying pleasant. It's going to be a great weekend of forecast. Just got to get through today first, again, as what's left of Debbie rolls through the area. Make good judgment with your family and friends this weekend, folks. Have fun at the races. Again, better weather as we head into the weekend. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson. Enjoy the race.
If you're looking for more great weather content, and we're looking for yours, you can find all of our stuff on favorite social media platforms. Just search the National Weather Desk. We'll be right back after this. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm meteorologist Matt Ritter. Make it a great Friday. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.